Next, I am going to give you some tips for what you can do well before your stand-up set to deal with stage fright when stage fright strikes, what you can do the day of your set, a few moments before you get on stage, if stage fright hits you when you're on stage, some things that you can do, and then a few more tips about moving forward with stage fright and trying to diminish it over time. So, and by the way, if you have stage fright just at the thought of, having stage fright and dealing with stage fright, well, awesome. That means that you can try out some of these tips just right away. So let's get into it. First tip, well before you go on stage, I recommend rehearsing a lot. One of the fears involved with stage fright is what if I forget my lines? And if you have your lines just down, if you know what you're going to say, then that fear diminishes quite a bit. And I also recommend when you are doing this rehearsing, if you mess up, don't start over. Because when you're on stage at a show, you're not going to have the luxury of being able to start over and get it perfect, right? So practice getting back on track if you've accidentally messed up in some way, forgotten your lines, said the wrong line, something like that. That practice will make you more comfortable with the prospect of messing up on stage because you'll know that you can get back on track. You'll have practiced it, you'll be more confident, you'll be more competent at it. So don't start over if you mess up. It gives you some contingency plans. If I mess up, what can I do? These are some things that I can do. What are some other contingency plans that you should plan for? This is helpful for stage fright because a lot of those what ifs are what if I forget my lines, mess up my lines? What if somebody interrupts me? What if a joke that I tell doesn't get a laugh? What if? And a lot of those can inspire fear because just the prospect of that bad thing happening, it's scary. But I recommend don't stop at that what if. Think about next. If that happens, what can I do to make it better so that the set can go great after that, so that I can get a laugh out of that moment, so that I can make the audience feel comfortable instead of uncomfortable in that moment? Plan for each of those things. Your act can be looked at like a complex flow chart where you know what you're going to do. No matter what happens, you kind of have an idea of what you're going to do. And this is all keeping in mind the perspective stuff from earlier, the vibe stuff from earlier. You stay comfortable, calm, the audience is going to stay a lot more comfortable and calm. The next tip that you can do well before you go on stage is you can build something into your act that acknowledges some stage fright, but also repackages that for the audience so that they root for you, so that they feel a different, more positive way about that thing, so that you can feel more positively about that thing. Let's say when you get on stage, your hands shake. Okay. You might frame that for the audience as something that makes you an underdog and something that makes you super brave because you're doing this thing anyway, even though your hands shake. And then the audience goes, oh, that's so cool that this person is doing that. And then you start to feel better. Whatever it is that you're nervous about, you can write some jokes about it, some material about it that reframe that thing for the audience in a more positive way. Next, I'm going to give you some tips that you can do well before you go on stage or anytime up to when you go on stage. Okay, so this first tip is that you should stay positive. Whatever you are working on, if you start doom thinking, that's going to make the thing go worse. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy to a certain extent. So steer your thoughts in a more positive direction. I'm not saying don't think negative thoughts. That's a really hard thing to do, not think of something. But what you can do, what you do have power over, is directing your thoughts. So if you start thinking negative thoughts, replace those thoughts with more positive thoughts. Don't just try to get rid of those other thoughts. That's hard. It's a lot easier to replace them with more positive thoughts. Think positively, and that doesn't mean don't plan for contingencies. Definitely do that. But be positive. You can solve this issue. You can make it go great. So the next tip is that you should think of something silly to do on stage to remind you that this is not that serious of an art form. It's not a State of the Union address. You're not convincing aliens not to invade Earth or anything like that. It's comedy. It's ridiculous. It's not a big deal. And so some things that you can do that are silly on stage will remind you that, hey, it's just a silly art form. Back when I would get really nervous on stage, I used to do some crazy stuff. Like I would drink an audience member's drink, or I would stand on a table or walk off stage while telling my jokes or something like that, right? And those things just reminded me like, hey, not a big deal. We can play around. It's just goof off time. If you're kind of nervous about being silly on stage, in a way, in those extra silly ways, you don't have to do it that big. You don't have to go big like that. You can give yourself little challenges that only you notice. Like while you perform, you touch all four corners of the stage with your foot, or you drink your entire glass of water while you're up there, or something like that. It doesn't have to be a huge, huge deal. Next tip, you should pick a perception that works for you. Whatever the perception is that you like a lot, that makes you feel comfortable or confident or energetic, or whatever mode you decided for yourself that works, pick that and then think of reasons why that perception is correct. The next tip is, this is a fun one. Inoculate yourself from the fear of bombing by bombing. So this one is, it's so fun if you make it fun. And the reason that it's so fun is that it's liberating. This thing that we initially are afraid of, it doesn't have to be scary at all. If you have a show coming up that you are a little afraid of, you think it's an important show, maybe before that, go to some open mics that are not a big deal. And it doesn't really matter how you do. It's just a practice open mic, right? And do those things that you're afraid would go wrong. So forget your lines, say the setups but not the punchlines, look at the audience weirdly, whatever it is, do those things, and you are kind of, it's like a flu shot for your emotions, you know? You'll feel a little bit of those feelings that you were afraid of, but not that much because it's not an important show. And you are doing it on purpose, so you're taking the power back. And if you apply to those actions a mindset of, I'm going to have fun with this, you can make the power of that scary thing just go away altogether. And you are just enjoying it. And it's just like fun with the spectacle. And even sometimes your audience will start to just love that. Like they'll understand that it's silly that this thing went wrong. And then that event of that thing going wrong is the special thing, is the fun thing. So inoculate yourself from bombing, a really great tool. Next, I'm going to give you some tips for what you can do on the day of your performance. On the day of your performance, I recommend dressing the part. Look good. If you look better than your audience, then you're going to feel more like a leader. Your audience is going to treat you more like a leader, like somebody who should be on stage because you're well dressed. It's just a nice confidence booster. And this means something different for different kinds of acts, right? So you may be the kind of act where it makes sense to wear a suit. You may be the kind of act where it makes sense to dress in casual streetwear, but a really nice version of it. You may even be the kind of act where it makes a lot of sense to wear a hoodie and some shorts or something like that. And if that's the case, just be the best version of what that character would wear, right? What that act should be wearing. Look the part, you'll feel the part. You'll feel much better. Another thing that you can do is meditate. This is a super useful tool for a few reasons. I mean, all of the benefits of meditation, kind of clearing your mind, the centering yourself, lowering your anxiety levels. But it's also great because if you are gearing up to do something that is giving you stage fright, that's a spiral. That can be a spiral where you're thinking about it a lot, you're getting more and more nervous, and you need something to reset that spiral. And meditation can absolutely do that. Just give yourself that sense of calm, and then moving forward from there, way more of a productive, easier thing to do after you meditate. A similar tip that is not as inactive, but it still gets your mind off of the thing that you might have been dwelling on, is find something fun or funny to do. Watch a funny TV show, play a video game for a little bit. Just give yourself a break from thinking about that thing. And then when you come back to that thing later, you'll be in a better place. I recommend not changing your diet or changing the amount of caffeine that you drink too much. You might think that eating healthier or drinking a lot of caffeine will give you a lot of great energy. But what might happen is you eat what you think is healthier, but maybe it affects you differently, or you drink a lot of caffeine and then you just get the jitters and you get more anxiety. So stay within the range of things that what they do to your body. How they affect you. If there's like a type of diet that you're going to feel better eating, then yeah, do that. And don't drink way too much caffeine. I also recommend getting to the show early. If you get to the show early, then it feels more like you're in charge. The people who come in after you feel like they're your guests, rather than you walking in after they get there, and then you feel like an intruder in their space. Another thing that you can do is set a stop time for your anxiety. This is kind of a lot of these tips actually might seem a little bit silly because they're psychological tricks. And just hearing about them, you might think like, oh, they're not going to work on me because I know what the trick is. But I got to tell you, we're not that smart humans, like we can absolutely trick ourselves. We can know that there's a trick and it still works. And this trick has worked really well for me. Setting a stop time for your anxiety, a time of day or a amount of time before you go on stage where you just know that you're going to turn off your anxiety. The time for anxiety is done. And instead, it's the time for being confident and funny and fun, or whatever mode perception you've decided for yourself. I've tried this even 1 minute before I go on stage, and it's worked really well. Highly recommend this tip. All right, next, some tips for what you can do once you get to the show. After you've gotten to that show, hopefully early, like I've said, you can do some stretches or, something to walk around for a while, get your blood flowing, right? Get thinking, work out the anxiety through the movement. That can be really helpful. You can do that earlier if you want to, but it's really helpful to do so that you can lead right up to your performance. You'll be feeling good. Your blood will be flowing. You'll be thinking better. You should maybe talk to people as they come in. Say hi to them, exchange smiles, interact with them. That will remind the audience that these aren't strangers. They're not scary. They're nice people. They want to have a good time. They like you. They're grateful that you're there to show them a good time. Another thing you can do is stand in a self-assured position. Do things physically that a confident person would do. And a lot of times, our minds follow that. The part of our brain that tells us to be anxious and have stage fright is rudimentary. It's old. It's a vestigial part of our brains, like I talked about earlier, right? And so it's not that hard to trick. You can physically disarm the amygdala and make it just calm down and stop being so constricting on you. So stand in a self-assured position. You can throw your shoulders back and take deep breaths. And as you do that, throwing your shoulders back is, one, it's great for expanding your lungs so that you can breathe deeper. And then as you breathe deeper, you'll notice you're starting to get more calm. And as you start to get more calm, all of those other tips will start to help a lot more. And it's because you're starting with the physical mechanism to get more calm, to disable that amygdala. And then you can build the philosophy a lot more easily. You can believe it a lot more easily because you are a little more calm. So definitely stand and be physically more calm. The next tip is don't tell people that you're nervous on the day of the performance when you're at the venue. If you're like way before your show, then you can absolutely do that. You can tell people you're nervous. You can work through it with them. You can talk about it, talk through it, think about it, contingency planning, all of that stuff, right? But when you are at the venue of the show, be that confident, embody that confident person. And when you tell people that you're confident, you start to become a little more confident. You start to feel like you are more the way that you are saying that you are. Conversely, if you say that you're nervous, then that becomes a little bit more of your identity. So don't do that. Say you're confident. Embody the confident person. Next, I am going to give you some tips for what you can do the moments before you go on stage, and potentially even when you're on stage. So the moments before you're on stage, visualize success. Look at the comedian who's going on before you, or look at the microphone and the stage and imagine yourself in that position. Being confident, telling your great jokes, getting great laughs from the audience, but focus more on yourself and what you're doing because that's what you can control. You are crushing it up there. You're just destroying. You are so cool. You're so funny. You're so smart. Think about that stuff. And that will give you a nice trajectory when you get on stage to be that person. Breathe deep and then go on stage. And when you're on stage, remember, it's okay if things go wrong. Things go wrong sometimes. But wrong is a perception, right? You can treat it like it is bad, or you could treat it like it's a gift. Because on a certain level, anytime something goes wrong, that's an opportunity. When something goes wrong, if the audience knows that it goes wrong, then they think about what they would do in that situation. They would get nervous. Oh no, something went wrong. And so if you don't act like that, if you instead stay confident, like you are on top of things and you think that that is fun, that that thing went wrong, the audience gives you major props. You're way braver. You're way more agile than they would have been. They think you're smart and funny and cool. And those are bonus points. Those are bonus points that you wouldn't have gotten had nothing gone wrong in the first place. And so when I have an interruption or I mess up a line during a joke or anything like that, I'm excited because I know that the audience knows that the next thing that I say is going to be off the cuff. It's going to be something that I'm going to be confident with. And so they are going to be impressed by that. So you can do the same thing. And if they don't notice the thing that went wrong, then just keep moving. They don't know what ride you have planned for them. And so if you just move on to the next thing, then they are having fun on the ride. So you don't really even have to acknowledge that. Just go with the flow. If things go wrong, that's either great or it didn't happen at all. You'll decide in the moment. If you feel yourself getting stage fright while you're on stage, and it happens once in a while, I want you to take a breath. And that might be scary to do because you're on stage and there's kind of a time warp that's happening where every second on stage feels to the performer like an eternity. But when you take a breath, you can, like I said earlier, kind of mechanically disarm that nervousness. You can become a little more confident, right? And when the audience sees a person on stage taking a moment to take a breath, they respect that. They think that that is a confident move. They think that's really cool, actually, that somebody is confident enough to be silent and breathe for a couple of seconds. And it feels more conversational too, because when you're in a conversation with people, sometimes there are pauses. Sometimes a person takes a breath. That's normal. It actually contributes to the feeling that this is an extemporaneous event, which audiences also like. They like when it feels more social and less like a memorized thing. So it actually benefits you. Highly recommend doing that. Next, I want to give you some thoughts to think for right after a joke doesn't work. And that happens. That is a normal thing. Happens all the time. Happens for your favorite professional comedians. Happens to everybody. When a joke doesn't work, I don't want you to think, oh no. Because it's not an oh no. That moment is a contingent moment on you, right? The way that you react to that situation is the way that the audience, it highly affects how the audience reacts to that situation. So a joke doesn't work. You can do a lot of things to reframe that moment. You can laugh at the fact that that joke didn't work. You can, if it leads into the next thing, you can just rush on to the next thing as if that wasn't the important part of the thing that you're saying. And so it kind of treats it like the ride actually continues. The big part of that ride is up ahead. Or you can do a save. And then just also know that the audience still likes you. It's not a sign of them not liking you. Just be comfortable in that moment. They'll be comfortable in that moment. Show awareness that it happened so that they know that you are socially aware. But most importantly, be comfortable. Awareness plus comfort is huge. That will really help the audience stay with you and enjoy your next jokes to come. And sometimes the audience is just quiet. The social proof is that they're not going to make sounds, and so they don't make sounds. They don't want to be the one to start making sounds, and that is that's normal. Sometimes that happens, and just, audiences aren't always loud like we'd like them to be. And they'll come up to you afterwards and say that they had a good time because they were too nervous to laugh. And so they won't tell you they were too nervous to laugh, but they are more likely to tell you that they had a good time if they were quiet and had a good time. So enjoy that too. Stay cool, stay confident, stay fun during your set, after your set, and you'll just keep getting booked. People will love you. It'll be great. After you have many sets, you will learn over time some perspective on this. No single set is all that important. It's all just building towards a better set in the future. There's going to be huge successes. There's going to be bombs. You're not perfect. You're not the greatest thing in the world, but you're also not the worst person out there either. We're all flawed. We're all working on it. We're all getting better. It's really not a big deal to bomb. It's just part of the growing process. You'll wake up the next day, things will be normal. And you'll know that after time, after you do a lot of sets. You'll know that audiences are fickle in a way that benefits you. Like I talked about earlier, they are going to, if you do bad, they're going to be like, okay, that was bad. But they'll forget because they have a lot going on in their lives. And then later, they'll see you again, you'll do better, and they'll be like, oh, that person's great, right? And then you're great from then on. Or you do great, and then you bomb later, and they go like, oh, that person's, I know that they are great, but they just didn't do great that time, right? So it works out in your favor. And finally, your loved ones love you no matter what. It doesn't matter if you do well or not. Like I said, this is just a silly art form. No big deal. Who cares? You're doing it for fun, or you're trying to make it a career. But either way, it really benefits you to have some perspective. Your loved ones love you for who you are, not because of some stand-up set that didn't go as great as you wanted one time, okay? This is not that big of a deal. Use those tips that I gave you, and your stage fright will get better, hopefully quickly, but if not, keep working on it. It'll get better over time. You now have tools so that you can manage those and give great performances, even if you're feeling nervous.